Her phone is flooded, DMs stacked, heart emojis, dinner invites, flirty promises. It's the same cycle every day. Tap, scroll, ignore. It's all noise until your name shows up. Then everything slows. She opens it, she reads it, she answers. Not because you're trying harder, but because you're not trying at all. You're not chasing, not performing, not scrambling for a place in her life. You're the rare stillness in a world of chaos, a man anchored in himself. That's the difference. Your value isn't in gifts, compliments, or approval. It's in the quiet confidence that you don't need to be chosen to feel whole. Most men were taught wrong, told to buy their way in, bend over backwards, and hope for the yes. That's not power, that's dependency disguised as romance. But you've stepped out of that game. You've built from the inside out, choosing strength over validation, self-respect over desperation. If you feel that shift, drop "I choose control" in the comments. From now on, every truth we speak is a weapon to sharpen you, a reminder that you're the prize. And when you live that truth, she won't just notice you, she'll gravitate toward you. Number 1, competing for her is weakness. She won't choose the man who bends over backward. She won't choose the one constantly chasing, adjusting, and proving. She'll choose the one who never chased at all. The one who made her feel like he didn't pick her, he simply allowed her in. Read that again. The moment you tweak your tone, shift your schedule, delay your gym session, or dull your passion just to be more available for her, you've already lost. You've stepped down from your purpose and offered her the throne. And whether she realizes it or not, she won't sit on it with gratitude. She'll test it. She'll test you, not with evil intent, but with instinct. And you've given her a front row seat to your collapse. It starts small. Late replies, sudden distance. She cancels plans last minute. She sees if you'll chase, if you'll react, if you'll beg for her attention. And the moment you do, her respect quietly fades. Not because you did anything cruel, but because you became predictable, accessible, forgettable. You argued your worth instead of embodying it. And that, my brother, is where most men fall, because they confuse attention with attraction. They think effort equals loyalty, but effort without self-respect is just emotional debt. A man's energy is currency, and if you spend all of it trying to buy her validation, you don't just go broke emotionally, you become spiritually bankrupt. She doesn't want a man who begs to be seen. She wants a man who is so secure, so rooted that even if she disappears, he doesn't sigh him. He remains unmoved. He stays on mission. He doesn't flinch when her energy shifts because his identity isn't built around her attention. Ask yourself honestly, if she stopped texting right now, would your structure fall apart? Would you cancel your morning run? Would your work ethic suddenly dry up? Would you spiral? Because if the absence of her approval breaks your foundation, you never had one. That's not love. That's obsession dressed up as devotion. And here's the twist. The man who refuses to compete isn't emotionally distant, he's emotionally directed. He's not cold, he's clear. And in that clarity, she feels something rare, a man who doesn't need her, but stands in full power even in her presence. That unsettles her. It pulls her in, not because he's playing a game, but because he's done playing any game. Competing is for men who haven't built a life of their own, so they orbit around hers. They try to become her world, and ironically, she runs from it. Because when a man gives up his center, she loses interest. And the more you adjust yourself to fit into her frame, the more she feels smothered, the more she pulls away. A powerful man never persuades, he never begs to be chosen, he builds. He builds a mission, he builds a rhythm, he builds a structure so compelling that she either rises into it or exits, but either way, the music doesn't stop. She doesn't want to be chased, she wants to be drawn by a man who could walk away at any moment, but stays because he chooses to, not because he's afraid to lose her. That's what makes him different. That's what makes him unforgettable. Not loud, not flashy, just still, just certain. That man doesn't disrupt her with noise. He disrupts her with silence, with restraint, with direction. And when he leaves the room, his presence lingers, not because of what he said, but because of who he was and who he didn't need to be. That's the man she remembers. That's the man she cannot control. And if she cannot control you, she will never forget you. Number 2, detachment is irresistible. There's a reason she forgets the men who flood her phone with good morning texts, but can't stop thinking about the one who disappeared without explanation. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about not needing to be gotten. It's not a tactic. It's a state of mind. A man who no longer needs her validation to breathe walks differently. He wakes up with direction. He checks his goals, not his messages. He lives forward, not sideways. And that presence, that silent certainty, makes him untouchable. Not because he hides how he feels, but because he chooses where those feelings belong. He doesn't toss his emotions around, hoping to be noticed. He places them with precision on things that grow him. Every time you check her story, ask yourself, what am I really looking for? When you double text, pause and ask, what void am I trying to fill? Because if her attention is the bandage for your emptiness, you don't love her. You're just distracting yourself, and she can smell that desperation from miles away. She may not confront it, but she feels it in the way you respond too quickly, the way you explain yourself too much, the way you cancel your workout just to call her back. Women are intuitive. They may smile politely, but they can sense weakness before you open your mouth. And desperation, no matter how nicely dressed, is still repellent. That's where detachment becomes power. Not coldness, not distance, direction. When a man is anchored in purpose, his absence is louder than another man's presence. He doesn't say, I'm busy. He just lives like it. His silence isn't manipulation, it's momentum. He's not pretending to be strong. He is strong because his sense of self no longer depends on her reaction. And that's when he becomes magnetic. That's when she starts leaning in, not because he chased, but because her curiosity pulled her toward him. Why didn't he react? Why didn't he try harder? Why does his attention feel more valuable than the others combined? Because he isn't performing. He's not proving. He's building something she doesn't quite understand, a life that doesn't orbit around her. Most men surrender their edge just to feel chosen. They trade the gym, the grind, the focus for a chance at maybe. And in doing so, they lose the very energy that made them attractive in the first place. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop begging. You stop chasing the approval of others and start respecting yourself enough to walk away from anything that drains your value. And that strength, that centered, non-reactive strength, she craves it. She may never say it out loud, but when she meets the man who listens without losing himself, who sees her beauty without falling at her feet, who feels deeply but stays grounded, she doesn't forget him. Because most men fold. Most men ask what she wants. He's different. He already knows what he wants, and he won't bend for a mood swing. That man creates gravity. That man becomes rare. And in a world of a million options, rare is the only thing that gets remembered. She won't chase him out of fear. She'll chase him out of curiosity, out of respect, out of instinct. Not because he gave her butterflies, but because he gave her depth. He didn't flatter her surface. He spoke to her substance. And now, even in silence, he's still present. That's detachment. Not cruelty, not arrogance, but self-respect at its highest form. It's knowing you're enough with her or without her. It's feeling the desire, but choosing discipline instead of desperation. And that's what makes her obsess quietly while pretending she doesn't care, because deep down, she's had dozens of men offer her the world, but only one ever made her want to be in his. Number 3, mystery outlasts attention. She forgets the man who texted her, good morning every day, but she remembers the one who barely spoke, the one who left quietly, yet still haunts her thoughts months later. It's not about how much you say, it's about what she feels in the silence you leave behind. Constant attention becomes noise, but space real. Intentional space becomes unforgettable. It's not the absence alone that makes her obsessed. It's the depth behind the absence. She knows when a man's time is for sale. She can feel the desperation behind overused compliments. She's used to being surrounded by men competing to impress her, loud, agreeable, trying too hard. But then you show up a man who doesn't rush to speak, doesn't fight for her validation. You don't adjust to match her. You hold your own. You create silence, not awkwardness, but gravity. And suddenly, she can't read you. She can't categorize you, and that unsettles her. You didn't try to be liked. You didn't overshare. You didn't deliver your soul on a platter. You kept just enough of yourself private, and that ironically made you stand out more than any words could. She starts thinking about you after the conversation ends because you didn't close the book. You left pages unturned. You made her wonder not out of manipulation, but because you're already committed to something larger than her, your purpose. Most men overshare. They confuse emotional availability with emotional exposure. They update women like a feed, trying to stay relevant, but in doing so, they lose their edge. You don't need to tell her everything. You don't need to always reply. You don't need to make sure she understands you. You need to move with clarity. Let your pauses speak. Let your silence raise questions, because questions lead to curiosity, and curiosity turns into obsession. Every other man is shouting to be heard, but you walk with quiet certainty, and that contrast makes you unforgettable. She doesn't want the man who's always available. She wants the one who makes her pause, the one whose energy lingers, even after he's gone. This isn't about manipulation. It's about discipline. It's about self-control. And it's about knowing that a man who controls his presence also controls his impact. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be remembered by the right one. So stop chasing attention. Start mastering mystery, because when you no longer need her interest, you begin to create it. That's the man she tells her friends about, the man she still doesn't quite understand, the man who didn't beg to be noticed, but still couldn't be forgotten. Number 4, build a life she can't disrupt. If you want her attention, don't chase her. Build a life so solid, so focused, that she can't shake it. If you want her loyalty, become a man whose world can't be interrupted, especially not by emotion, distraction, or neediness. There's nothing more powerful than a man whose days are already full. Not full of women, full of goals, purpose, structure, clarity. A man who moves through life with direction doesn't beg for attention. He becomes the attention. See, when your time has value, she feels it, not because you tell her. It's in how you move. She doesn't just get access to your time, she has to earn it. That subtle shift changes everything, because here's the truth. Women test men, not because they're cruel, but because they're hardwired to seek stability. When you cancel your schedule for her, she registers it. When you skip the gym, delay your work, drop your goals to text her, it tells her, you are my new purpose. And that, ironically, makes you less attractive. You think it's romantic, but it's the quiet beginning of self-abandonment, and she feels that. She won't say it, but she senses it. And she starts pulling back, not because you failed to give, but because you gave up your foundation for her comfort. No woman wants to be your entire world. She wants to step into a world you've already built, a world held together by discipline, a life that doesn't bend to every mood swing or message, a structure that continues regardless of who enters or leaves. When your rhythm is unshakable, she feels lucky just to be invited. Not because you begged, because you didn't. You simply kept moving, and that is rare. A man who doesn't pause for her emotions becomes the anchor she didn't know she needed, and doesn't waver. He doesn't ask what she wants before knowing what he's building. He wakes up early, trains his body, sharpens his mind. He doesn't wait for validation. He creates progress. Too many men die with their empire still on paper. Too many lose their fire chasing butterflies. She may enjoy your attention for a while, but she'll never stay in a life she can control. Because deep down, control is boring. But discipline is magnetic. She'll follow a man who doesn't stop when she gets emotional. She'll respect the man who doesn't cancel his mission to make her feel secure. And in that respect, love is born. Not from pleasing, but from leading. When you build that life, when your friends, your work, your peace come first, it's not rejection, it's power. It tells her, you're welcome here, but I'm not stopping for you. That energy makes her decide, either rise into your world or watch from the edge. And here's the catch. If she leaves, the rhythm continues. The music never stops. You don't need to skip beats just because she's around. You let her find your rhythm or fade out of the song. That's leadership. That's confidence. That's what she remembers when the noise fades. Not the man who gave her all his time, but the man who made his time sacred. Number 5, talk to her mind, not her body. Most men talk to her surface. You want to be unforgettable? Talk to her depth. She's heard you're beautiful 1,000 times, so often it barely registers anymore. It's not that she's numb, it's that those words have lost meaning because they cost nothing to say. Most men speak from habit, not intention. They notice what's obvious, her figure, her face, her fashion. But she already knows what she looks like. She's seen the mirror. She's edited the photos. She's lived under the spotlight of shallow attention. What she doesn't know, what still surprises her, is the man who sees what isn't on display. The weight in her voice, the hesitation in her eyes, the silence between her words. That's where connection begins, not at her curves, but at her complexity. You don't need poetic lines, you need precision. Don't compliment what she already hears daily. Compliment what no one has dared to observe. Don't say, you're hot. Say, there's something in the way you pause before speaking, like you've had to be strong when no one noticed. That gets her attention, not because it flatters her ego, but because it touches her truth. You see, most men chase her body, few chase her story. Most seek to impress her, few seek to understand her. And here's the truth. Understanding creates safety. Safety creates trust. And trust makes you unforgettable. You want her to crave you? Make her feel seen, not just watched, seen. Ask her what makes her angry, what she's never told anyone, what keeps her up at night, not just what she binges on Netflix. Ask her what she believes in, not just what she likes. That's how you separate yourself from the noise. She'll forget the man who chased her looks, but she'll remember the one who listened without trying to fix her, who asked better questions, who noticed the emotion behind the smile, the sorrow behind the sarcasm. When you listen this way, your silence speaks louder than compliments ever could. You don't need to be charming, you need to be present. Read her energy, not her outfit. Observe her rhythm, not just her words. A man who can feel without touching, who can hear without interrupting, that's the man she holds on to when everyone else fades. Most men try to impress her, but the rare man gives her a mirror that reflects not her beauty, but her depth. That man, he doesn't over-explain. He doesn't try to be liked. He's grounded, still, aware. He doesn't react to her image. He responds to her essence. He doesn't just look at her, he sees her. And when a woman feels seen, truly seen, she doesn't forget. That's the kind of man who stays in her mind long after the others disappear. Number 6, scarcity creates obsession. A man who is always present fades into the background, but a man who is rarely seen, rarely heard, and never chases, he becomes unforgettable. It's not because he's trying to manipulate, it's because his focus is sacred and his time is limited. She can feel the difference between a man who's just available and a man who is building something far more important than her approval. You don't vanish because you're playing games. You vanish because you're protecting your energy. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you rare. She notices when you don't reply right away. She notices when your energy isn't constantly orbiting hers. She feels your absence not as punishment, but as proof that your life doesn't stop for anyone. In a world where most men beg to stay, you walk away in peace, not in anger, not in ego, but in alignment. You don't need to announce your worth. You let silence do the talking, and that silence echoes in her mind longer than any sweet words ever could. She'll wonder where you are, who has your attention now, what you're creating in the space she no longer occupies. And the truth is, you're building you. You're not busy chasing attention, you're busy chasing legacy. You're not ignoring her to make a point, you're unavailable because you understand time is currency and yours is invested, not spent. While other men flatter her for a moment, you leave a mark that lingers, not on her body, but in her thoughts. You're not the guy who texts 10 times a day. You're the man who disappears. And still she can't stop thinking about you because she's not obsessed with what she sees. She's obsessed with what she can't figure out. You don't respond to every message. You don't explain your silence. You don't give her closure because she never truly had access to you, and that's what makes you powerful. You become the memory that doesn't fade, the standard she silently measures others against. You weren't trying to be a mystery, you just refused to shrink your life to fit her attention span. You lived with depth. You disappeared with dignity. And now, your silence speaks louder than every man shouting for her love because the rarest men are the ones who leave without breaking the rhythm of their mission. Number 7, emotionally grounded men win. There's something unshakable about a man who refuses to be moved, a presence so steady, so rooted, that no storm outside him can reach the calm within. That kind of man doesn't just get noticed, he earns reverence, especially from women, because she's used to men who crumble, men who flinch when her tone changes, men who chase harder when she pulls back, men who argue just to be right. But the grounded man, he does none of that. He doesn't rush to explain himself. He doesn't plead for validation. He doesn't fold under pressure. He holds, he breathes, he lets the moment pass, and in doing so, he shifts the dynamic entirely. Suddenly, she doesn't feel in control anymore. She feels drawn in, not out of power, but out of fascination, because this man, this still, calm, deeply centered man, cannot be provoked. He doesn't react to her tests. He sees through them, not with judgment, but with clarity. And that makes her lean in closer. Why? Because she's not used to stillness. She's not used to presence that doesn't dance for her approval. This man's silence speaks louder than any raised voice. His patience communicates more strength than force ever could. He listens with intent. He speaks only when necessary, and when he does, his words land like truth. She tries to push him off balance, but he doesn't budge. She creates emotional noise. He answers with grounded stillness. That's what unnerves her and attracts her because it's rare, because it's real, because it's stable. See, most women don't test men out of malice. They test because they want to trust. And trust only forms when a man proves that he won't collapse under emotional weight. If you chase when she pulls away, you fail that test. If you change your schedule, your routine, your purpose just to keep her around, you lose the frame. But when you allow space, let her walk. If she chooses without bitterness, without panic, you reveal your edge not because you don't care, but because you care more about your own peace than about begging for presence. Emotional control isn't suppression, it's mastery. It's knowing what you feel, but choosing how and when to act on it. It's holding space for silence because you trust the silence. It's refusing to be baited because your energy is reserved for purpose. And in that calm, she feels something rare, safety. Not from being agreed with, but from being around a man who will not be shaken. That man becomes the anchor in her chaos, not the echo of her drama. And that's the man who wins, not with control, not with charm, but with discipline. Number 8, be the experience no one else can offer. She won't stay for looks. She won't stay for your wallet. And she won't stay because you text her every day. She stays for one reason, because being around you feels unlike being around anyone else. Not because you try to impress her, but because you live in a way that leaves an imprint. A man who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't perform, he just is. And what he is rare. A presence that vibrates with intention. A life so rich in meaning that simply standing near him makes her feel different. Most men never become that. They memorize clever lines, mimic what they saw online, follow trends like sheep, hoping to be liked. But you You don't echo anyone. You don't blend in. You create something she didn't even know she needed. She goes on dinner dates with other men and forgets them before dessert. But she remembers how you looked at her, not at her body. But through her defenses, she hears your silence louder than their voices. She feels your calm in the middle of her chaos. Why? Because you didn't just touch her hand, you touched her truth. While others made her laugh, you made her stop. While others entertained her, you made her reflect. You weren't a distraction, you were a disruption. You didn't just speak, you made her question. And that's the difference. You didn't give her more attention, you gave her something no one else could. Contrast, depth, a mirror. You showed up with presence when she was scattered. You slowed down when she rushed. You stayed grounded when she tested for weakness. You weren't the man she could predict. You were the man she had to rise for. That's what makes a man unforgettable. Not charm, not money, not tactics, but truth. You live it, you breathe it, and that energy, it leaves fingerprints on her soul. She won't tell her friends about your car or your job. She'll tell them you were different, real, present, unshakable. So stop trying to be liked, stop trying to say the right things, and start living the kind of life that no one else is bold enough to live. Be the calm in a loud world, be the depth in a shallow culture, be the fire she can't replicate, because men fade, experiences stay. And when you become the man who is the experience, she doesn't just want you, she remembers you forever. If you've made it this far, that already tells me something about you. You're not just another man scrolling for comfort, you're searching for clarity, for strength, for truth. Because deep down, you know something has to change. The chase hasn't worked. The overgiving hasn't worked. Trying to be enough for someone who never saw your value, it left you drained. But now, that ends. This isn't about bitterness. It's about waking up. It's about stepping back into your own power without apology. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't need to beg to be chosen. You need to choose yourself consistently. That's what this channel is for. Not just to talk about stoicism, but to live it, to lead with discipline, to let silence speak louder than desperation, to reclaim your edge. If something in this video resonated, let it stay with you. Not as motivation, but as a mirror, a reminder of who you were before you got lost chasing someone else's approval. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. Share what part of this message hit hardest. Let's keep building this brotherhood. See you in the next video.